Farhadi, he's a former advisor to the Afghan government. He joins us live from Geneva. Torek, so many questions about the future of Afghanistan now that the U.S. Military has withdrawn. What are the main challenges that the Taliban faces going forward in governing this country?
Well, Rachel, the symbolism that comes to my mind is that when the U.S. went in, its embassy was closed in Afghanistan 20 years ago. And now that the U.S. is coming out, its embassy is closed in Afghanistan, 20 years on, and so much investment. We have had 240,000, close to a quarter million fatalities in Afghanistan, and the foreign forces who have lost their lives in Afghanistan, and the Europeans, and all the treasure that had been spent. The question is, can a country be changed by outside forces? Yes, it can. We see that a generation of Afghans have gone to school, especially girls, some to universities. But at the end, the same generation had to evacuate. Most of them are now in distribution camps where they have to go to a different future, unknown future. And to the extent that some of the people I have talked to in these camps don't know what it will become of them, basically. Their careers are thrown upside down. They have had to leave their homes within a week or 2 weeks' notice. The challenges for the Taliban are really to manage the poverty that Afghanistan is left with. This is the other reality. After all this money spent during the war, most of it didn't reach the poor in Afghanistan. So now the most interesting thing is that in the next few weeks, what we will read about Afghanistan is famine, hunger, the fact that some of the people would like to leave the country, not because they're unsafe necessarily, but there is no future for them. And the economy is essentially shut. Banks are shut. You have to wait hours to withdraw $100 or $200 per week only. And it might get worse if the Taliban manage to go under sanction, because they are not listening really to the calls of the international community to bring non-Taliban in the government, to bring women in the government, so they could be acceptable to the international community, because the international community wants to help, but from the optics of it, it's very difficult to help if there is repression over people. But up to the last day, today, when the US shot a car in which there were rockets, next to this car or near this car, children also died and civilians also died. That's the story of a war. It's a war between enemies, but the civilians are caught in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talk about the potential for sanctions against the Taliban. I know that Germany has promised aid to Afghanistan if the Taliban allows people to continue to evacuate, people who want to leave Afghanistan to evacuate after August 31st. And the French President Emmanuel Macron has said that he is willing to speak to the Taliban on humanitarian issues. What is the reality for people? Because, it's the people who will be hurt most by these sanctions and the economy, correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely. The Taliban don't know how to govern a country. They know how to fight, and they know how to play the time game. And they had the time, and finally the world got tired of its investment and it left. But now the Taliban are faced with the challenge of paying the civil servants the monthly salary, paying the famous army that collapsed their monthly salary. But there is no money. There is no money. There is no liquidity in Afghanistan. And with all the relief that people have from the fact that there is no fighting, there's no money in Afghanistan. And very soon, people will look at these new cast of governance and governors, I would say, and say, so what can you bring to us? Okay, peace, okay, but beyond, we have to eat. The world wants to help Afghanistan because it doesn't want the humanitarian crisis to arrive at a point where people also seek the door of refuge because there is no livelihood in Afghanistan, and the world knows it will happen. It has already contacted the Europeans and the Americans indirectly have contacted the Pakistanis and even Iran to pay money so that if refugees come out of Afghanistan, they could be hosted, quote unquote, kept at the border and not come towards Turkey and to immigrate to Europe. That's one of the points. And the Germans, the Europeans are doing a lot of diplomacy around Afghanistan to convince the countries surrounding Afghanistan to host refugees. And Europe is willing to pay for their stay there. But the solution really is to still put pressure on the Taliban to create a type of government where people can feel safe. The youth can feel there's a future to stay here. And this pressure of leaving, and then leaving for what? Because after you arrive in another country, there's the unknown. You can't be forever in a camp, and you can't. Somebody can't host you forever. You have to come out and start working, but the language, the diplomas you have, everything is different. So the best thing is to still work with the Taliban, but pressure on the Taliban to accept others. The Taliban are very much in themselves right now. In the last few weeks, we have seen that they haven't really called on the other people, on this educated class, to come and help them. They have spoken that way, but they haven't done it. And there is a lack of confidence in them wanting to share power with others, with women, with people who don't look like them, with Afghans who are not Talibs, will not become a Talib. We will never become a Talib for the Taliban. We don't look like a Talib, but we are still Afghans and we want to help our country. But they are not calling. It looks like they have fought and now they want the fruit of their fighting, which is power. But this power also will have victims in Afghanistan, mostly children who will be undernourished, deprived of education in some cases, because Taliban will limit the education of girls after grade 12 for now. After that, they want segregated education at the university, but for that, you have to have women teachers. So there's lots of contradictions in what they want to do. But they can't do it alone. In time, resistance will form against the Taliban because if they want to impose a certain way of living onto Afghans, 36 million Afghans, those who haven't left the country, people will start protesting and resisting.
All right, and we'll leave it there for now. Torek Farhadi, thank you for your assessment, joining us from Geneva.